I got up, stood up, went to the kitchen, and if you go swimming and you get water caught in your ear, right, you have that funny feeling. That's what I was experiencing. I have no headache, no problem. I didn't think anything was wrong. I'm just standing there in the kitchen thinking, maybe I got up too quickly from the chair. So I went back to the living room, a few steps away, and sat back down and just let it calm down. And it didn't calm down. And I said, this is strange. Still, no pain, no problems. Nothing alerted me to an issue. And I was thinking, all right, maybe I should drive over to the emergency room. It's only 7 minutes away. And then a woman's voice was very loud and very clear. No, you're not going to do that because you won't make it out your driveway.
I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Fight Camp. After hearing so many stories about second chances, I realized taking care of my health isn't just about living longer, it's about living better for the people I love. Fight Camps become part of our daily routine.
Hello, my name is Kathy Winings, and I'm here to share my story, my near-death experience. It took me a year before I would speak about it, though, because it took me time to process it. My background is I come from education. I'm a religious educator. I taught in a seminary for almost 30 years. So it shouldn't have taken me that long, but it did. Because I'm a musician, I tend to think of things in terms of movements, musical movements. So my NDE really took place in 4 movements. First movement was very quick. It was where my aneurysm ruptured. I had no idea that I had one. I had a heart aneurysm for sure, but we didn't know about the brain. So sitting at home, of course, it was December 5th, and that's a very precise day for me. And time, 5:15, because I had just finished watching a Christmas program. So I got up, stood up, went to the kitchen, and if you go swimming and you get water caught in your ear, right, you have that funny feeling. That's what I was experiencing. I have no headache, no problem. I didn't think anything was wrong. I'm just standing there in the kitchen thinking, maybe I got up too quickly from the chair. So I went back to the living room, a few steps away, and sat back down and just let it calm down. And it didn't calm down. And I said, this is strange. Still, no pain, no problems. Nothing alerted me to an issue. And I was thinking, all right, maybe I should drive over to the emergency room. It's only 7 minutes away. And then a woman's voice was very loud and very clear. No, you're not going to do that because you won't make it out your driveway. So you're going to get up, you're going to get your phone, and you're going to call EMS now. That was all I heard. So it surprised me so much I called. And what had happened with the liquid, that was the rupture of my aneurysm. And that was the blood that was spilling around in my brain because of where my aneurysm was located, which is under what is called the Circle of Willis. For those neuroscientists, you know where that is. It is like the California thruway of our brain in the sense of all of our blood and arteries go through that area before going to the rest of the body. So it has everything there. So that's why I was experiencing liquid. That's also why for the next 30 days, I had no idea who, where, what I was and where I was. I was not conscious most of the time. So that was phase 1 or movement 1. That was the aneurysm itself. I would later discover that the woman's voice was my mother. My mother had passed away December 5 at around 5:15 in the evening, although much earlier year-wise, it was 1985, but of the very same aneurysm as I had. Same location, same type. She was one of the vast majority who do not make it. Most people have such an aneurysm, don't survive past the first hour. What she'd had is she had tremendous headache, just finished dinner with my father, went into the bedroom to go lay down, and the moment she sat down the bed, she was gone. As she lay back, her head hit the pillow, she was already dead. That is normal. That is the norm for this kind of aneurysm. So the next group of percentage are those who survive, but with tremendous disability. Only a small percentage, between 15 and 20%, survive with very little damage. I am in that count. This is why my surgeon calls me his miracle patient. So I get rushed over to the hospital, and then after that, I'm in the larger hospital for the next 30 days. Ups and downs. took place. The first stroke was that night. The second stroke was halfway through December. So just when it looked like I was getting better, things got worse. But by Christmas time, it looked like I turned a corner and they were going to transfer me back to the original hospital so that I could begin residential rehab. However, let me say, movement 2 of the symphony began. Because on my way back in the ambulance, just outside of the town here where the hospital is located, I crashed and they were losing me. By the time they turned into the hospital, they had lost me and I had begun to cross over. All I remember of that crossover experience, which was amazing actually, I thought we were going in through the interfaith entrance. I have no idea why. That's what I thought was happening. But more strangely, I thought that we were going to a dairy farm. Now, everyone's near-death experience is always a little different. Mine is different in that regard. And sometimes, for those having an NDE, when you cross over, you go into a space that brings you the greatest calm and peace. And both of my parents came from farming families in Indiana. So, of course, I always associated the farm with peace and sunshine and beauty. So I'm on a dairy farm. But what was unique about the dairy farm is that the barn was the most brilliant red. It vibrated. I have never seen a red so beautiful. The equipment, gleaming silver. Now, of course, I didn't see any cattle. No cows. Didn't hear any. Of course, I didn't smell anything either. But only the barn and the gleaming equipment. And then I was led into the kitchen, the farmhouse kitchen, so that we could have some lunch. And I'm looking at the table and thinking, what a beautiful piece of wood. I mean, everything in my experience so far had shown me this was a remarkable place. If the barn gleamed and the color vibrated, the table, the beauty of the grain of the wood was like none other. It was like the most expensive wood grain piece of material you've ever seen in your life. And all the while I'm thinking, this is the most interesting place to have physical therapy. Wow, they really make you work, I bet. This is hard. You do everything. Next thing I know, I'm on a walk. I'm walking around the paths of the farm, and I see the beautiful green grass. I'm looking at how stunning it is. And the blue sky. I mean, we will often say in our life, isn't that a lovely shade of red or green or blue? But I tell you, nothing has ever compared since to the colors I saw there. And just as I was going up a little hill, because I knew instinctively, I'm going up this hill and I'm going to be meeting Jesus and Muhammad. Now, I was raised a Protestant, so meeting Jesus was not unusual for me. But Muhammad, that was interesting. But I didn't question it. Maybe because I worked in an interreligious seminary, I don't know. I did a lot of interreligious conferences and conversations. But just as I saw the tops of their head, a voice behind me, high up in the sky, said, "No, Kathy, you have to go back. It is not your time. You still have work to do for me." And next thing I knew, I was back in some kind of vast space, room, like a hospital room, but huge. And then that was it for the next almost 30 days. So they had taken me back to the original hospital, and I was placed in ICU again while they tried to recapture my strength and help me rebuild. I had had a third stroke. That's what precipitated my near death. So that was movement 1. Movement 2 was far more interesting because movement 2 was my conversations with God. Now, of course, during all this time, I did not question where I was. Thinking I was going to meet Jesus and Muhammad, it didn't dawn on me that I would be off the earth. I just didn't think about it. But as I'm in a subconscious state, I begin to have a conversation with God, or in my terms, my heavenly parent. I see God as my heavenly parent. And I will often use the term Mother God and Father God, because I believe God has a masculine and feminine nature, which is why we reflect that. So I heard God's voice. God said, "You do realize I who saved you. It wasn't your doctrine, and it wasn't your theology. It wasn't words or concepts. It was my love. That is the only thing powerful enough to save people." He said, "My love flows in your veins, much like the blood flows in your veins." And God asked me to put my hand on my arm and to feel for my pulse. and to see if I could feel the blood flowing. And she said, just as you feel that, my love is that real. You need to understand how real that is. It was something that I will never, ever get out of my head or out of my heart. We talk about love. I taught my students how to teach about the heart of God as the most important and not to get caught up in theological debate. It has its place, but basically I felt that our youth and our young people and our seniors want to talk about the love of God. But here was something far more real. And I realized I talked a lot about love. We talk a lot about love, our songs. But how much do we really believe that that love flows in us in a very real dynamic? We're taught that we reflect God. And even though we may not always have reflected and demonstrated that love, God has been patient with us and has loved us unconditionally. That is what I experienced in that first, experience with God. It was after that initial conversation that I was reminded by Mother God, Father God, both, that my life would change. It would be different. I would not think the same. I would not speak the same. I would not act the same. I didn't think so much about it until I realized down the road, many, many months later, I am different. I am very different. The first thing my Heavenly Parent asked me to do, I was asked to seek forgiveness from people. Not to forgive, but to ask for forgiveness from people to whom I may have damaged their heart. For me, that means I may have said something to hurt them. Words hurt. Words have the power to hurt because they can't be taken back. We sting with our words and our language. How much have we hurt someone with hateful language? So I was asked to go to those people that I may have wronged in that way, or I may have hurt in that way. That was one of the most difficult things I've been asked to do. Not because there were a lot of people, but I think the pride that I had. So it was difficult, but it got easier. It's much easier now for me to go to someone and say, I'm very sorry for that. I think I hurt you. So that was the first step of my transformation. And that transformative movement has been ongoing. When we learn about NDEs, we don't hear often that it is an ongoing process. We hear about the experience, but we often don't think it is ongoing. But it is. The experience we had was a catalyst for a life-changing transformation. It is hard to go through our NDEs and not change. So after asking for forgiveness, the other thing that I noticed in my transformational path, as an academic, I do a lot of paper editing for journals. And I realized that someone who had prided themselves on their intellectual acumen, I was really sharp with my critique of articles. But after the NDE, I couldn't do that anymore. My first response was not to critique the writer. I couldn't. Physically, I couldn't. What I could do, though, what I saw immediately was, did the person write with spirit, with heart, with love? And were they able then to share their conscience, their innermost being, and their innermost dynamic and intellectualism through that? It's reversing the head and the heart. Rather than leading with our head and following with our heart, which we often do, especially academics. This time I was asked, no, start with the heart. Allow it to shape the intellect, the head. So in the first few articles, I would look at the editorial board and I would say, gentlemen, I'm sorry. I was often the only woman. I said, gentlemen, I'm sorry. Your responses are brilliant. I just can't relate to them. Not at all. So I'm sorry, I can't say anything. Here's where I am. And it was always different. But I soon became comfortable with that difference. And now it's a part of me. When I teach piano, my piano students will tell you immediately. I often say to them, it isn't a question about technique. Playing piano is not a question about playing from the head. It is about playing from the heart, allowing the heart to guide your technique. Because I can tell a pianist who plays with love and heart and one who does not. And there is a difference for me. That is what I tell my students, and they'll tell you that. Article reviews, book reviews, the same thing. It also has become easier The other important way in which I've changed is my language and my behavior. I'm very cautious about how I respond to people. I try not to react. During the past political season, it was very difficult. In the times before, I could argue politics with the best of people, and I had my views. But this political season bothered me, not because of the candidates per se. It was because of what I heard. I heard terrible name-calling, accusations. I heard things that hurt my heart. So I knew that as part of my NDE, I had promised Heavenly Parent that I would change my language and I would live according to the love that flows within me. I have to realize that whether I agree with someone or not, that person is a son or daughter of God, and God loves them, regardless of what they have done. Regardless, I can do no less. Now, that doesn't mean I have to agree with their actions or their behaviors or their words or language. I don't. And I don't have to condone their actions or words. But how I do it, how I respond is important. It is like the different tests and experiments have been done about language and what it does to water crystals. Now, I know that some of these experiments have been debunked, but others have not. And if we think about it, our body is 75% water almost. And when I saw the pictures of what happened to water crystals in a bottle that had ugly words all over it versus the jar with beautiful words, it was stark difference. And I had to think, if I'm saying this to someone whose body is 75% water, just on the sheer physical nature of it, what is going on in them? And what's going on in me?
A lot of people we feature talk about coming back from the edge with a new sense of purpose, a deep desire to truly live. That really hit home for me. My wife and I recently committed to a full lifestyle shift. We're doing the 75-day hard challenge, and between parenting, business, and everyday chaos, Fight Camp became our anchor. It's an at-home boxing workout that actually keeps you motivated. Every punch is tracked, every round is gamified. It's not just fitness, it's a way to fight stress, stay accountable, and build the kind of health that lets you show up fully.
But more importantly, I realized I was hurting their heart. So I can disagree with someone's policies, but I cannot talk about them personally. This is why I do a lot of work in diversity, DEI work. I do a lot of work in racism, because how we respond and how we see each other is so harmful. And this is what I cry about, because I feel God's pain, because these are God's sons and daughters hurting each other without realizing it. I would like us to find a third alternative, going outside of the either or paradigm to a third paradigm that says, how do we go past this? So I will not criticize someone personally, no matter how egregious their behavior was, but I will talk about their behavior, because that needs to change. This is also a critical component in family systems theory of counseling. When we personalize our heart hurts, and we say, you never do this, you always did this, you say, it blocks conversation, it blocks change. We become defensive. Instead, I perceived your actions as this. I said this to someone one time. I said, your words I perceived as being sexist. I did not criticize them personally. I talked about their words and how they were being perceived. That's a very different experience. Behavior as well. I cannot mistreat someone anymore. It's too painful for me, because I realized how painful it is for my Heavenly Parent. And that is my standard. So that is what my NDE did for me. It was not a one-time thing. I'm continuing to learn and grow, and I'm continuing to listen and hear how my Heavenly Parent wishes to speak with me and to me. I've also become a lot more sensitive spiritually. In many ways, I've become more closer to being a medium, which I never was before. So I find that rather interesting. Of course, I'm only just beginning my journey. This journey started, the first movement started in December of 2020. So it's been a short time. All I can think of is, the quote by William Gladstone, who said, I look forward to the time when the power of love will replace the love of power, then our world know the blessing of peace. So I wish peace and love to each of you listening. Thank you very much.
If you like this story, be sure to support The Other Side NDE by checking out our brand new book below.
Staring lost about